It is the second book of Horror Mayhem, and it is still Supernatural week. I've been trying to do 2 books a week, which is kind of a rush for me, while reading other things as well. The second book that I read, I was originally going to read for Folk Horror Week, but Nothing But Blackened Teeth ended up taking so long to get here, which it finally did, but took so long to get here that I ended up switching things up, and I read Coyote Rage by Goingback as supernatural horror instead of folk horror. It would have fit into either one. The premise of the story is that Coyote, who is part of the Great Council in the Native American spirit stories, and the council in this, I don't want to say fantasy land, but this other realm that they have the council in, he has decided that he wants to declare war on humans. He is a shapeshifter, so he can shift into a human and does at different points in time. He kind of shifts halfway a lot. And he makes this big plot of that they're going to finally kill humankind. And the main storyline is then about him trying to specifically kill off the human council member who has not been to the council for a very long time because he's an elderly man and he's in a nursing home. And they're also trying to kill off his daughter, who he is estranged from. She hasn't had anything to do with him since she was 12 years old, and she's living in Florida somewhere. So as Coyote and all his cronies are going to try to kill off Luther, who is the elder, and the one who is actually the member of the Great Council, the human member of the Great Council, then they're also trying to find his daughter. So they go down and they're looking for Sarah Reynolds, who is his daughter as well. They end up kind of being thwarted by another spirit character, I guess, in Raven. Raven is friends with humans, and it actually fit very, very well because they talked about Raven was okay with the humans because the humans, particularly Luther, would put food out for his kind, and he would do all sorts of nice things for Raven's family and different stuff, and Raven felt that he needed to reciprocate, and that actually is something corvids do. Corvids are very, very smart. Ravens and crows are very, very smart, and there's documented cases that when people will feed them and stuff, particularly a little girl I remember reading about would feed them, the crows would come back and start bringing things like shiny objects they found, pennies they had found different places, toys they had found different places, little things, and they would bring back to reciprocate for her feeding them. So that actually was fit perfectly into everything. So Raven is in this race against time to try to save Sarah and try to help save Luther as well. The situation with Luther is, because it happens very, very quickly in the book, I don't feel like it's spoiling anything. The nursing home he is at has an absolute massacre. It is gory massacre that happens there. That is because of Coyote. And Luther then creates a portal and goes to the other realm. So he spends most of his time in the other realm, and the rest of the story is about him trying to get across the other realm to get to another portal where he can contact Sarah, and it's Sarah having weird things happen and trying to figure out what's going on, and Raven trying to get to her before Coyote can. So the whole thing is very, very closely tied to Native American folklore and very tied to animal characters. These characters are animals. They can shift into humans, some of them, but they are, for all intents and purposes, they are animals and act like animals for the majority of the time too, even though they can speak and do different things like that. I was actually surprised. I had just sort of stumbled across this one, as independent publishing is sometimes a crapshoot when you are looking for different things. I just stumbled across, I was looking for Native American horror authors, and this one came up in my search lists, and I thought, that looks okay. That fits into the page number of what we're looking for here, and I picked it up. It was actually surprisingly very, very good for what I felt like an independent book being put out would be. It could have used another editor. I did notice some editing issues, and it just felt like somebody could have gone in and smoothed over the writing just a little bit. But as an author, Al Goingback, who I've never heard of before, the plot moves along very, very briskly. This is not a long book, and I was able to read it very quickly, and it kind of leaves on an end. It's very open-ended. I think this might be a series. It has a lot of similarities. It felt like kind of like how Dean Koontz would have written, or the type of plot they wrote, with sort of supernatural things very commonly in normal life. There's a little bit of humor in it at the very beginning, that she's a mortician, and the body that she's working on sits up and starts talking to her, and she thinks it's saying Fred Astaire, but it's not saying Fred Astaire because it's got a plate in its mouth. It finally spits that out, and it said beware. It's trying to say beware, Blue Sky Woman. And there's a lot of confusion over that. The only other thing I would say maybe is, as a criticism, is sometimes the characters act a little... Things happen, I'm like, there should have been a bigger reaction there from that character than what that reaction should have been. But that also feels like an editing thing would have caught. Like, just a second reader would have been able to catch that sort of a thing. But as the second book for Horror Mayhem, this one, very, very good. It has this is independent publishing. It has an error here on the side. They've put the spine label the wrong way. Like when you put it on a shelf, it is kind of backwards. So independent publishing is what it is. But this is a very, very good book, surprisingly, for what I was expecting, just kind of getting into it and not anticipating what was going to happen. And I was really impressed with the integration of Native American folklore into just a modern urban fantasy horror story, in such a way that it didn't feel like a lot of urban fantasy. It's just like, oh, there's a centaur there. Oh yeah, the fairies live down the road, and it's not really different from real life, except for the fact that there's mermaids. Well, this one does feel like there's a very distinct weaving of Native American folklore and making it make sense into a real world sense. And I really appreciated that, and it was really well done. Enough that I am curious about this author to try to find the one that I believe it's a he, that he wrote called, that won an award, Crota, that ended up winning the Bram Stoker Award. So, very good job on his part, and I'm impressed. Just wish there was like another editor there that could have done something to help a little bit and make it a little more what we expect from a blockbuster type fantasy horror novel. But very good effort.